Hey everyone, I'm Jaden,
And I'm Noah.
and we are the Super Gamer Bros, and this is the Super Gamer Bros podcast. We're just a couple of brothers who love playing games and love talking about games, so that's what we do. So today, Noah, we are talking about a game that recently came out, the last console exclusive of the PS4, Xbox One console generation, Ghost of Tsushima. It was developed by Sucker Punch, the game company who made the Infamous series, which we both have a history with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was heavily anticipated for many years. It was announced in 2014, 2015, maybe? And it finally came out, and it was very well received. It definitely ended this console generation on a high note for many, many people. And, we both enjoyed it, so let's talk about it.
That's true. Ghost of Tsushima, Jin Sakai. So, in Ghost of Tsushima, a Mongolian invasion led by Khotan Khan, who is
I think is he the cousin of
when I looked it up, it said nephew or
nephew?
something like
He's
that.
Sakan's
But I
nephew.
remember in the game, I swear he said cousin or something like that. He said my cousin
Well, I
or
think
something like that.
I think he's Genghis Khan's nephew,
Right.
and his cousin Genghis Khan's son is the
Oh.
leader of the Mongol army at this point in
Got it.
history.
Right. That makes sense. Hmm. So anyway, they land on the island of Tsushima, right? And the protagonist, who is Jin Sakai, Lord Sakai, joins with the rest of the island's local samurai, who are like the police
They're
ish,
basically like
or
all aspects of the government.
that's fair. That's true. So they all gather on the beach, and it's led by Jin Sakai's uncle, who is Lord Shimura.
He is the Jito, or the head of the island.
Right, the leader. And they have like, what did they say? It's like 70 samurai, right? Don't they throw a number around?
Yeah, it's. I think it was less than 100 was what he said.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a lot.
Yeah. And so they are basically everybody, all the samurai are massacred. Lord Shimura is taken by Khotan Khan, and Jin Sakai falls in battle. And then he is saved by a thief. She's a thief is her official title, I guess. She pulls him from the battlefield and nurses him back to health, right? And then she teaches him a different way of fighting, more of a hit and run tactic, sneak
Stealth.
attack, stealth type stuff. And he becomes the ghost. He picks up this mantle, right?
Yeah, so basically, his his path of vengeance, I guess you could say. Basically, all the samurai were killed except for him and his uncle. And so the game is split into three acts, each act with a different kind of overall goal. On the first act, you need to take back Castle Kaneda, which is like basically a gateway between the southern part of the island and the rest of the island, because there's like a very small bit of land that connects the two, like the northern and southern parts of the island. And that castle is basically like the gateway to the northern part, and that is where Lord Shimmer is being held. So Jin recruits different allies. He rescues Yuna's brother, who is a blacksmith named Taka. He recruits the master archer Sensei Ishikawa, who was not at the beach for reasons. He recruits Lady Masako Adachi, who is the last surviving member of the Adachi clan. And then Ryuzo, who is a childhood friend and rival, who is now the leader of the Straw Hat Ronin, which basically like ninjas, sort of. I is how I kind of interpreted them.
I thought they were more like outlaw samurai, like
Like
unofficial,
mercenaries. I
like
yeah,
mercenary samurai,
no, I guess
because
because
they
they
were like,
do.
because like Ryuzo wanted to be a samurai, but not just anybody could be a samurai.
It was basically like a you're born into it. It's a
Right.
nobility type of thing.
Exactly. And so they were like, the outcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But that made Ryuzo bitter,
Mm-hmm.
which, didn't end well for him.
Yeah, so he gets everyone, and they go to take back Castle Kaneda. Ryuso and the Straw Hat Ronin do not show up, so Jin just decides to take it with everyone who did show up. And upon reaching the kind of main garden of the castle, Ryuso is there waiting for him, and basically the Khan promised Ryuso and his men food if they work for him. And Ryuso agrees out of desperation, and basically because he has no love for the samurai, really. So then Jin defeats Ryuso in battle, and Ryuso flees, and Jin rescues his uncle, and at that point, the Khan basically flees north and takes Castle Shimura, which is Lord Shimura's home.
Hmm.
And then that leads you into Act 2.
Act 2 is part I really like because Lord Shimura is free, and so you get a lot of the relationship between Lord Shimura and Jin. And you also go to Jin's home, and you get a lot of his history there. You meet, oh gosh. You go to Jin's home and you meet Yoriko, who is like basically the house servant, I
Yeah,
guess.
she was like the head servant
Right,
lady.
right. So in this act, you basically spend the whole time prepping to take Castle Shimura. And while all that's going on, Jin is having the argument with his uncle about whether it's right or not to be honorable or stealthy in combat, right? Because he's getting a bad reputation among the samurai, and his uncle.
Yeah, basically, Jin is, more and more kind of going with this new way of fighting, which is the sneaking, the assassinating. He has Yuriko make poison darts for him, which is, obviously not something a samurai would do. It's seen as like a coward's tactic. And Lord Shimura is very, very, it's like set in his ways of this is how the samurai do things, this is how we will do things. And the Khan studied the samurai and studied their ways. So Jin says we can't use that against him. We can't do that because he will beat us because he knows, like, if we do our ways, he will guess what we will do and he will beat us easily.
Hmm.
And so basically in Act 2, you ask for help from the Shogun of Japan. You get your armor back from like your father's armor, Jin's father's armor from his home, and you go to Yarikawa, which Yarikawa basically is uh, a clan in their stronghold that tried to rebel against the Jito. At this point, it was like 20 some years ago before the events of the game. They lost, and so they were stripped of their samurai class and basically are like a little town of, you could say like outlaws,
I
sort of.
thought more pirates ish vibe.
It's more like, they're like, that's like the dangerous city. They're left alone and they don't bother. The samurai don't help them. They don't help the samurai. Is basically how
Right.
it goes. And then once you get all of them, you go to take back Castle Shimura, which leads to a lot of samurai that were sent by the shogun dying on this bridge trap set up by the Khan. So then Jin and his uncle have an argument because Jin says, we should do it my way, it'll save lives. And his uncle says, we will do it the honorable way because we are honorable men. Then Jin, disobeying his uncle, sneaks into the monk compound, poisons their milk that they were drinking, and they all die. Very painful deaths because the poison is not like a, silent death. It is very horrifying. He then encounters Ryuzo, who has basically been abandoned by the Khan. All of the Straw Hat Ronin are dead, and he basically asks Jin to like cover for him and like get him back in the good graces. And Jin refuses, and they fight, and Jin kills him. But then, because he poisoned all the people, he is labeled as an outlaw by the shogun and by his uncle, and he's arrested. And that ends Act 2.
So Act 3 begins with Jin captured in Castle Shimmer, but he manages to escape. Does he escape with her help? I'm
No,
still
it's with Kenji's help.
Kenji's help. Okay, Kenji tells him. No, they all help him escape, right? Didn't they
Yuna
set it
Yuna
up?
meets him later. No, Kenji like comes in and like gets the guard to leave by like telling him that like everyone's drinking wine or whatever, sake.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then he leaves, and then he
Mm-hmm.
meets Yuna at that burned tree, like the
Mm-hmm.
sacred tree that had been burned down and stuff. Um, and then that's, I mean, yeah, that's he meets Yuna, and they, you know, begin to plan and stuff for that.
Right. So that's when he fully embraces his role as the ghost. He escapes with Yuna, and he becomes an outlaw from his uncle and all the samurai at this point. But still, at this point, he's become like a legend. Everybody is in agree he's the ghost. People fear him the most at this point, and they respect him, especially the common people of Tsushima.
So in Act 3 of the game, Jin escapes prison and travels further north. He discovers that the Khan is using his poison, like discovered how to use it, and is planning on taking his poison to the mainland and use that to basically decimate the shogun's army there. They discover that he is in Port Izumi, and then basically Jin just gathers his allies. He leaves a note for his uncle asking for his help as well, and they invade Port Izumi and manage to kill the Khan. Then, after that, Jin gets like a letter from his uncle basically requesting that he meet him at his home by the lake. Jin goes there, and his uncle meets him. They have a conversation where basically Lord Shimmer tells him that the Shogun has disbanded Lord Takai. All of his land is going to be given to other samurai, and he's, branded as an outlaw and must be either captured or killed. Then this leads to Jin not wanting to, refusing to repent basically, and still going in his way. It ends with him fighting his uncle, Lord Shimura, at his father's grave, at Jin's father's grave. And at the end of the fight, you can choose to either spare Lord Shimura or kill him, which is what Lord Shimura wants because he wants an honorable death, in combat and stuff. And then that's the end of the game.
Did you kill him?
I did.
What happens?
Well, Jin, basically Jin says like, no matter what, I'll always be your son. And then stabs him, and Lord Shimmer says, like, find me in the next life. And then Jin is very upset, and then it's credits.
Okay.
Did you not kill him?
No, I
What
didn't kill him.
happens?
He says, I have no honor. And then he probably says, I'll always be your son. And then he leaves, and he just leaves him there.
Wow, he says, I have no honor. That's rough. I don't like that. I don't like that really because I think his whole thing was like he felt he was
Being
doing the
honorable.
honorable thing by saving lives, like saving as many lives as he could. That's why
Hmm.
he, did all that stuff was to save lives because he didn't want more people to
I
die.
disagree. I think he was rejecting his uncle's definition of honor.
Mm, I don't
That's
know.
how I read into it. I
I don't
guess
know.
that's why they say it's up to interpretation.
I suppose so.
So let's get there and let's talk about the characters. You have, Jin Sakai, who is the head of the Sakai clan and a samurai warrior. He is also the ghost. He is the nephew and ward of Lord Shimura. Lord Shimura is Jin's uncle, the Jito of Tsushima, basically the lord. There's also Yuna and Taka. They are brother and sister. Yuna is a thief who rescues Jin from the beach. They both support Jin becoming the ghost, and Taka is killed by Khoten Khan.
And which that I skimmed over that. Like, I mean, I skipped that completely in my recounting of the story, but that really is a very big moment because that's one of the main things that leads Jin to just fully like abandoning his uncle's ways, pretty much. Was he was captured and Taka tried to free him and then was killed by Khoten Khan.
Right. And then the rest of his, basically like his crew, right? Lady Masako Adachi. She's the old lady samurai. It's a pretty big side quest. Her entire family was murdered, and you're trying to figure out who orchestrated it. And it ends up being her sister. It's a pretty dramatic
Mm.
side quest. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Sensei Ishikawa, who is basically like the master archer on the island, and he takes Jin as his student and teaches him the way of the bow. And you chase another of Sensei Ishikawa's students who went AWOL and joins the Mongol army.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the antagonist?
Yeah, basically the two main antagonists of the story is General Khotan Khan, who is the leader of the Mongol army that is attacking Tsushima, and Japan. I guess he is the grandson of Genghis Khan.
That's what I'm saying. There, when I read, many different things had many different relations.
I mean, I
So
think
I
back
don't
then it
know
can
what
get a little.
officially it is. No, I mean like when I was reading about the game.
I see. I don't know.
Because I looked it up because I was like, what is his relationship? And then it had many different people
Yeah.
said different things. But I say we just go with
In the
nephew.
game, they say he's the Khan's nephew.
Just go with nephew.
Whether that is referencing
Just
Genghis or not, doesn't really matter. And then there's Ryuso, who is Jin's childhood friend. He is the leader of the Straw Hat Ronin, and he basically became the leader after the beginning of the game with the attack on the beach because the Straw Hat Ronin was there. They lost many of their people, including their old leader, and then Ryuzo basically was just the one who took charge after everything. He ends up betraying Jin because the Khan puts a bounty on his head, and all he really cares about is Straw Hat Ronin, his men, feeding them, everything. And because of that, he betrays Samurai and he is killed by Jin.
and then there are some extra characters you meet on different side quests, like Kenji, who is a merchant and a con artist. Basically like the goofy character of the game. I think he probably has the biggest divide on how people feel about him, in my experience.
I liked him.
I liked him. I thought
I liked him because I think he was someone who was like, especially if you do his, side story missions, there are three of them.
Mm,
He's like trying to do good,
mm,
but he doesn't know how. And Jin kind of is guiding him with that of using the skills he normally uses to con people in a bad way to use that kind of same, suaveness and
mm-hmm.
people skills he has in a good way.
Right. You do see that growth in him. Although I believe I have heard those who are not in favor of Genji. My character I dislike is this next one. That's Norio. Norio is the Buddhist warrior monk. You meet him
Right at the beginning
in
of Act
at the beginning of Act Two, right? And was with a group, and a lot of people at the temple were killed, including his brother, who was like the defender of the temple. And so Norio basically takes over that position in all of the work he does with Jin, reclaiming the temple's artifact and fighting off people who are Mongols who are trying to invade. And so Norio just stays as one of these side
Yeah, I
characters.
don't really like Norio either. I did not like his little side story. I just did not like him.
Mm.
I think the game would have been perfectly fine if his whole thing was just not in it.
Hmm. And then there's Yuriko, and she was a Sakai clan caretaker. She basically was taking care of the estate while Lord Sakai was gone. And I really enjoyed her missions, her side missions, because you got to learn about the history of the Sakai clan as
Yeah.
well as like Jin's personal history. She talk about Jin's childhood and or his parents or
Yeah.
their relationship or it was a good way to do that type of side mission.
Yeah, her story was pretty cool because she was really old and she like especially in like her side missions at the end, she's just cuz it does end with her dying. And her whole thing with like she's kind of like a little senile and she keeps referring to Jin as his father.
Mm-hmm.
And Jin learns a lot about his father from her just because she thinks she's talking to his father and just keeps bringing up these moments in the past that Jin
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about.
Yeah.
And, Jin kind of had like a troubled relationship with his father. And I think through these missions is kind of how he learned a lot about his father because his father died when he was very young.
We also didn't talk about that either. The fact that his father died in an attack on his home and Jin was there and his father called for him
Yeah.
to help him. Jin did not
He
take
was too
action. He
afraid.
was young. He was
Hmm.
young and afraid.
Hmm.
And Jin carried a lot of guilt with him about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say by the end of the game he's over that. I think that's still
Right.
something that affects him.
So
Yeah, that's really it for the characters. There's obviously a lot of people, but there aren't a lot of notable people. But I do think those notable people are very, for the most part, very solid.
Right. But the main story and the side stories are all very entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed every single one.
Hmm.
Then we have the gameplay to talk about, and there's a good amount to dive into.
Yeah. So the main thing, obviously, you're playing as a samurai slash ninja guy.
Oh,
Combat. A lot of sword play.
mm-hmm.
I thought the sword combat, in my experience, is one of, if not the best I have played in a game.
Mm-hmm.
It was very well done.
I give it a very close second to Sekiro, which I believe has the best sword combat. It has the most fluid parry counterattack system. Although this game, I love its introduction of the stances, the moon, stone, wind, and water stance. You switch to different stances to affect different enemy types in their stagger.
Yeah, I really liked how the stances were implemented. You start with stone stance because that's
Mm-hmm.
just like natural. That's like a natural thing for a samurai to know because it's used for fighting other people with swords. But then there are all these Mongol bases, and when you go to the Mongol bases, you can watch the Mongol leader. And just by fighting the Mongol leader, Jin is basically like learning how to counter the Mongols and their weapons because there are men who use shields, men who use spears. They're just big brutes, and each stance he learns is to fight those specific people. And I thought it was just a very cool way they had you learn it, and it was very very interesting.
I completely agree. The different types of enemies, the brute, the swordsman, the spear, and the shieldman. There's those. There's the archers and the what is it? The
Like the
bomb
bomb
men.
guys,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are basically all the main types of enemies
Hmm.
that you will come across. Almost every enemy, save for the brute, can be perfect parried. Every enemy can be perfect dodged against. If you press circle and dodge once at the exact moment of the attack, you will. I think you're invincible through any attack
Yeah.
if you dodge at the right moment.
Yeah, the perfect parry and perfect dodge are basically, they're like because you can parry and you can dodge, but then perfect is like doing it at the exact moment when the attack hits.
Mm,
It stuns the enemy and gets you for the perfect parry. You get a free attack instantly. The perfect dodge you have to unlock, but that with skill points that as well gets you a free attack on an enemy, which
mm-hmm,
is a high damaging attack.
mm-hmm,
And if they're like, it also does a lot of stagger damage
mm-hmm.
because that's another thing that with the enemies in this game they have basically like block bar, which when they block your attacks, if you do heavy attacks on them, because there's this it does have a simple light heavy attack system, and using the light attacks, using the heavy attacks slowly breaks down their block meter, and then you fully stagger them once you have broken it down completely.
Right, and the different stances have a higher effect on different enemies. Like the wind is good against spears, water is good against shieldmen, stone against swordmen, and moon against brutes. You Jin also has ghost weapons and ranged weapons. He has a longbow, a half bow, bombs to throw, poison darts to shoot. He's got firecrackers to throw, smoke bombs, kunai darts,
Yeah,
all kinds of things.
I think the ghost weapons there's the sticky bomb,
Mm-hmm.
the kunai. Is the black powder bomb a ghost weapon? I think it
Yes,
is. And then the smoke bomb, and there's one more, and I cannot remember.
Caltrops.
No, those aren't in the story. I don't
Are
think.
they not in the
No, those are
story?
just
Oh
in
my
online.
gosh.
I think it might be the wind chime actually. I don't know. I don't remember.
Hmm.
No, I feel like it is because you don't get the wind chime at any other point in the story. Like there's never like a cut scene. Other than the ghost weapons, every other ability is unlocked through story, like the initial abilities, and there's no point when someone teaches you to use wind chimes or anything. I think that is a ghost weapon.
Right. And he has all these ghost weapons to use in stealth or in combat. And in stealth, enemy detection is not great depending on difficulty. I played the game on hard and I still thought it wasn't great. I could almost run next to people and still sneak attack
Yeah,
them.
it's very easy stealth mechanics. One thing I do like about the stealth mechanics in this game compared to any other stealth game ever is if a guy spots you and you kill like spots you, bar above his head turns red, he sees you, he knows you're there. If you kill him fast enough, then the alarm is not raised. In most other stealth games, the issue I have with a lot of other stealth games is the second one person knows you there, everyone suddenly knows you're there. You know? And that's something that can be very annoying because it's like you have to be perfect pretty much. But in this game, you can make mistakes because if one guy sees you, and it's not like a modern day game where they can just like get on a walkie-talkie and say, "Hey, he's here," and suddenly everyone knows you're there. If you kill him fast enough before he can tell people, then no one else knows,
Hmm.
which I really like. But I do think it definitely takes enemies too long to notice you, and especially you can get charms and the armor you have that can reduce their detection speed even more, which
Hmm.
basically means you can run past everything and no one's going to spot you.
Right. There's a lot of customization options in
Yeah.
the gear and the charms and stuff in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the
Um,
charms, they go on your sword, and they basically give you boosts in combat or in stealth or in range combat, and a bunch of different categories. And then there's also the armors. There's a bunch of different armors. All of them give you different boosts in stealth or in melee, or reduce the damage you take, increase your health, anything like that. And they all are upgradable, which upgrades their different abilities, which I thought it was a very good system. You definitely get enough of the supplies because it's something you need supplies to upgrade. There's just general supplies, and then there are a bunch of different specific things that apply to the different, like your sword or the bow or the armor. And I feel like there's definitely a lot, and there's definitely enough that you can upgrade everything all the way. Like I had everything upgraded all the way when I beat the story the first time. Like 100%ed it, did everything, and it's just really cool. It also, with the armor specifically, I would do this a lot. You can literally at any point pause the game, go to your equipment, and switch out your armor. You can do it in the middle of combat. You can do it at any point, which I found myself doing because I would have different, armor obviously for different scenarios because some of the armor is better for stealth, some of it's better for, melee combat, some of it's just better for traversal in general.
I did not switch armor that much. I found that I didn't need a boost in anything. I thought I took it just for the appearance.
Oh no,
So I spent most of the game, as soon as I got the Sekai clan armor, I upgraded it all the way, and that was what I wore.
I actually kind of, I mean, to me it was kind of the same. It was more like my armor choices for the most part were also more cosmetic than function because the function didn't really matter that much. I mainly would travel around with the traveler's attire and a
Yes.
straw hat because you
I
look cool.
had the Traveler's attire for a long time because it increased the range of the fog of war
And
coming
that
off of the
is very
map.
important. That was
It's
very
very
useful.
important, yes.
Um,
Until you find out that just clearing all the cans.
yeah, that was just something I wish I
Yeah,
knew
I did
beforehand.
not know that either.
Because at that point, which I guess
Because that's how
talk
I
about that.
did chapter 3.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more later. But with the armors, I was the same. Of like, I liked that when I was traveling around because I liked that look. And then when I was stealthing, I would use the ghost armor when I got that because I liked that look. When I was just going loud fighting people, I would wear the Sakai clan armor because I liked that look. It was more looks than anything. Like I also like wearing one of the armors you get is called Gosaku's armor, and that one like helmet and
Gosaku.
mask. Is it Gosaku?
It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You didn't listen to the tale of Gosaku?
I did. And the armor, like his armor when fully upgraded, is probably my favorite armor. It just looked really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good looking armor in
Hmm.
this game. And I like that as you upgrade it, it looks like
Yeah, it
more
actually does
interesting.
change the appearance. Like
Yeah,
it's more complete. I
yeah.
I really like that as well. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so let's talk about the traversal. In this game, you run, you climb, there's parkour, there's swinging on a grapple hook, there's horseback riding. So I had a lot of trouble with climbing and swinging and jumping. I fell a lot in this game.
I did not have a lot of trouble with that at all.
No,
Actually,
I
I
missed
did not.
ledges. He did not jump far enough a lot. It wouldn't grab sometimes. I
I
had a
did
lot of
have
those.
all of those issues that you were saying, but not enough for me. Like, not enough that if I was giving like someone my review of the game, I would not mention that because it did not affect my experience really at
It
all.
definitely affected my experience. When you're going after some of the shrines, sometimes I would have a really hard time with the jumps there, and I would do it like, maybe 6 times. And that's just annoying, because
Yeah, I know. I get that's annoying.
it wouldn't feel like user error. It would feel like a game issue.
Yeah, yeah, I get that's
One of
annoying. I
those
just
where the jump mechanic feels like it's the
the jump mechanic was certainly not. It didn't feel you like running and jumping does not feel good, but I didn't have any issues with it. Because
problem.
I mean, there were a lot of jumps that I would jump and be like, "Oh, there's no way I'm making that," but then I did. So I'm like, okay, like I have you know little issue because even though it doesn't feel great, it still worked a very like 95% of the time. So I had no issues.
Right. The swinging, before I played the game, I thought the grapple hook mechanic was more like in Sekiro, where it kind of just like connects the different points along a surface above you, and you can click almost anywhere, wherever it's like you're facing, instead of it being like marked positions. But I still like how
I mean,
the
I
game
I
is.
liked how it was. I think like really I was really concerned about how this game would turn out after Sekiro came out. Even really after Sekiro was announced because this game was announced before Sekiro, but Sekiro was announced and came out in a much shorter time and the game came out way before this one did and I thought, "Oh man, it's like two samurai games coming out pretty close together." I hope this doesn't negatively affect Ghost of Tsushima because Sekiro being a From Software game, I knew was going to be good. Like even having not played it, I knew people were going to love it. I knew it was going to be really good. It won Game of the Year, so I was right about that. So I was worried that that would negatively affect this game,
Mhm.
and I was also worried because I thought I hope the games are not too similar.
Mm.
Once again, wouldn't really affect me much because even not having played Sekiro, I wouldn't care if they were, but I knew that would probably look bad on this game if it did. But it didn't. And when I learned this game had a grappling hook, I'm like, oh no, it's just like Sekiro. I don't want it to be just like Sekiro. I want it to be different, and it was. So I was fine with it because it's like I would have been annoyed if I had to use the grappling hook to get everywhere.
Mhm. So in this game, you have different types of quests. You have the Tales of Tsushima that are like the side missions that you follow. Some will have like 9 chapters in their
Yeah,
side missions.
basically side characters that the big side characters Norio,
Sensei
Masako,
Ishikawa.
and Masako Adachi and Ichikawa all have 9-part stories. They're all side missions. Unit has, I think, a 4-part story. Kenji has a 3-part story. Yuriko has a 2-part story. And I think they're the only named like parts like that. Everything else is just random people that you find and help and stuff. There are a lot of side missions. I think there are like 61, something like that. It's a big number and I think they're fine. The ones that are focused on characters are longer, but all the other ones are very short. It's usually go here, look around, go here, fight enemies, or even as simple as go here, fight enemies, and that's it. So I thought it was very cool in that way because to me it was just all the side missions were exactly what I wanted, which is just hey, fight these people. Very simple. It made the fact that there were so many of them not a pain because you could finish a side mission in less than 10 minutes usually.
Hmm. And the combat may be repetitive, but it never stopped being enjoyable. Like
Yeah,
you always, it's just fluid. You really always feel like you're in control.
it was good. It was good. It was just a lot of like fun little stories.
Right. So
And
besides that, there's the Mythic Tales.
I loved the Mythic
They're
Tales.
perfect. They're
The
amazing
First
quests.
off, the ways that they're introduced with like the musician
Yeah.
storyteller and that
Mm,
Japanese, I don't know what that art style is called, but
mm,
that art style with showing the tales was really cool. The first one I encountered when I saw it, I was like, "Oh man, this is awesome."
yeah,
And the missions themselves are very cool.
they are.
They're like the longest side missions, I'd say, for most of them. And I like how they all weren't the same. Like the first two I did, I think, were basically the same. Of this guy's buried here, go to this place. Oh, okay, you found this place. Oh, it is a map to this place. Okay, you found this place. It's a map to this place. And kind of like that.
Hmm.
And then, there were others that were different, like Gosaku's. You had to free these 6 specific farms
Mm.
from Mongol control. They would give you keys to get his armor, and then you would get hit, like find that location, get his armor. There was also the
The Straw Hat Ronin
the Straw Hat
legend.
Ronin. What's that guy's name? I cannot remember his name. I cannot remember his
It's
name.
not like
Like Kojiro.
Kojiro, right?
Kojiro.
That's what I thought.
And with his, you had to, starting in the second part of the game, there were 5 different Straw Hat Ronin members that were just waiting for you to duel them, which all those areas were really cool.
Yeah,
There was,
beautiful. Hmm.
yeah, like there was the duel among the spider lilies, duel among, like the
The
ways,
waterfall.
yeah, they were
Hmm.
very cool areas, very cool scenes. And then his was like a duel in like this cave with his water and stuff. Really cool mission. I really like that one. They were different. There is the mission where you were basically the entire mission is climbing a mountain, going from one fire to another, so you don't freeze to death.
Yep,
To unlock the way of the flame, which basically lets you light your sword on fire. That was a really cool one as well.
it was. I had a really hard time with that. I had to look it up. And then other than that, there are the collectibles and the activities. Those are like the hot springs, the haikus, the Inari shrines, and the bamboo strikes.
Yeah, and there's also I think the Shinto shrines.
There's a lot of
They're
them.
the
Yeah,
bigger
there's a lot
ones.
of other activities, but
The
I love these. You
I
know,
loved most of them. I love the Shinto shrines. They were kind of like the platforming challenges. They
yeah.
were fun. Like I said, I didn't have the issues you did when it came to platforming, so I was fine with them. I love the hot springs because the first time you find a hot spring, you can like reflect on something,
You can
and it's just
always
more
do that in a hot spring.
for me. Well, I never used one more than once, so I guess I wouldn't know. But
But you have to unlock all of them for the platinum.
well, I used them all once, but I didn't use them more than once, like each specific hot
Oh
spring.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense.
So yeah, each time you use one, you get to reflect on one of 2 topics. That was really fun, just hearing Ben's thoughts on
It
things.
was,
His
yeah.
his whole just it was fun, and then it was also very short.
Yeah.
The haikus I loved. I loved composing the haikus. It made me
I
feel like an artistic man.
I did not enjoy maybe the first one or two, maybe the third, but then after that, I just kept mashing X and moving the stick in random directions and composing random haikus because I found out it didn't matter. All was it was just options on what you wanted to
Well, yeah,
say,
but I mean, I
and I
think
was like,
that's the
that's the point. I understand that, but I did not. That was not my type of thing.
I
But I had to do every single one of them.
I
I was
really liked
upset
it.
about that.
I really like those. I love composing the haikus, and plus haikus to me, I also like haikus to me because I feel like, in the basest of terms, they exist so the game developers could be like, look how pretty our game is. Because that whole thing is just looking at scenery from 3 different angles in so many different areas, and it always looked very nice.
Yeah, but I already appreciate it when I'm running around on the horse and the wind is blowing and I have this
Hmm.
rainbow colored leaves and
Yeah,
the sky is beautiful and I'm like, wow, this is great.
yeah. The Inari shrines,
Is
um,
that the
the
fox shrine?
foxes. There are way
That
too
got
many of
old.
those.
Yeah, that got old real
They were
fast.
cool at first, and the things they unlock charm slots for your sword, and then they unlock charms, and then they power those charms up, which is very useful when they power those charms up. They become the strongest, like, mini charms in the game. Way too many. There are 49, and it got to the point where, as I'm exploring and just finding everything, getting 100% and stuff, like every time I would come up upon a new thing, it would be an Inari shrine, and you're just way too many. It got old. I would have much rather have had more of the other 3 and less of these.
I did have that issue until I found out you could fast travel to any found
Anything
anything,
you can fast travel to any
anything
found anything.
found on the map, anything found. So anything that's not a question mark, basically, you can fast travel to. So at that point, I just went around and located everything and got rid of the fog of war and whatnot, and fast travel to the shrines. I did them all later.
Yeah, but even then, it's just following a fox for how many times? Like you can
Yeah, it did
find
get
like
annoying
I
for
did a
sure.
couple times. Just you can just find the shrines, and you don't need a fox to lead you there. Like there's even I'm pretty sure an option when you start the game to not even have fox dens. You just have to find the shrines. It just makes it more difficult, I guess. But there are way too many. I loved the bamboo strikes. They
I
were
did
really
love them.
fun.
Some of them were kind of hard. It
Yeah,
took
no,
me a couple tries.
yeah, but I like that. I like
Yeah,
that
I
they
like
weren't all
that too.
super easy. This is the one more than anything that I wish there was more of. I really wish there were more of those because I could have so much fun just doing those over and over again.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much everything you can do in the game. You can also other things you can find. You can find cosmetic items. Those aren't required for like anything, so I didn't do all of
Hmm.
those.
But when you find the shrines that have the sword skins on them, they play that cool little riff that I love.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
Like they're cool, but it's like the sword kits. Overall, I like them, but I think once again, kind of like there's just too many because like,
There's
there's
a
just
lot
too
of
much.
them. I'm talking about the music it
Oh, the
plays.
music is yeah,
Just that music
yeah,
that it plays when you're coming up.
yeah.
Love
I
it.
agree.
And the music is
The
fantastic in
music
this
in this
game.
game is incredible,
Authentic. It sounds amazing.
incredible. We also, I do want to talk because you had brought it up, the fog of war.
Hmm.
My least favorite part of this game was the was the exploring, I guess you would
Really?
say. I because I basically went through the entire first act of the game not knowing that if you free every spot, like basically they're like what would you call them? Like
They're enemy
yeah,
territories.
enemy
They're like
territories. If you free all of them
camps.
in a yeah, camps, that's the word. The enemy camps, if you take out all of them in an area of the island, it's split up into three areas. You completely obliterate the fog of war in that area, which if I wish I had known that in the first one because I basically, would go around with the traveler's attire because it reveals more of the fog of war and just basically go like up and down the line to get rid of this fog because I was trying to find everything. And it was really tedious. I really did not enjoy it. And then because when you take down each camp, it unlocks like a circle of the map around the camp. I think it should have unlocked more. I think the areas around were too small, and it made that exploration really tedious. It was definitely better when I learned that, oh, if I just free all the areas, then that's all I have to worry about. But until you beat the act that that part of the island focuses on, you still have to find those, which is still very annoying. So I really did not
That's
like
true.
that
I
aspect
think
of it.
those should be shown.
Yeah. At least
But at one point there was like it was Gosaku's armor and it would show where the farms were.
yeah.
And so I'd be like I'd keep those there so that I would know where it was.
Yeah, like that was useful, but yeah, I just did not like it. I think the area should have revealed the camp should have revealed more area
I agree,
per camp.
100%. There's definitely things that could be better, but all in all, this is a pretty good all-around game,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
No,
Why don't you
absolutely.
say that thing?
So Ghost of Tsushima really pushed the boundaries on the beauty of current gen games. When we did the Last of Us Part 2 episode, I had told you and Kyle that I don't play a lot of new games when they come out because I'm usually playing something else and they get put on the back burner. And this one was as well. I didn't play it for like a month after it came out because I was playing something else. But I did want to play it, so it did kind of get pushed to the front of after I finish this game I'm currently playing, I'm going to play Ghost. And it is really just incredibly beautiful for being like the last game on PS4 when it's at the point where it's like, okay, this technology is becoming more obsolete. The PS5 comes out later this year and stuff, so it's reaching the ceiling of how good games can look and I thought The Last of Us Part 2 had hit that ceiling. I thought Death Stranding had hit that ceiling. But this game really was just the colors, everything. And it just looked really just straight out of, stories.
Hmm.
And the game itself is very immersive in the fact that it has one of the most minimal HUD systems that I've ever used in a game. Addition of the wind being used as the waypoint system was incredible. It wasn't like, hey, here's this blip on the map, go to that blip on the map. It was, hey, follow the wind because it was just like much more realistic of I'm not looking at this beautiful ancient 1200s Japanese scenery, but here's this arrow in the distance right there.
Hmm.
It was very much just the environment itself was used to help you find things in the game, and I thought that was really cool. The beautiful cinematic shots they add to kind of create this samurai movie feel of the game. It was incredible. Sucker Punch actually sent an audio team to Japan to record different sounds, including birds, just to get that much more immersion into it.
Authenticity.
Authenticity, that is the
Mm.
word. And then you can even play the game completely in Japanese with English subtitles to just once again just make it so much more immersive.
Right. I always respect that.
And I mean there's even the Kurosawa mode,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically the game is put in black and white and even given like an old film like filter to basically because it's inspired by the films of the famous Japanese director Kurosawa,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just really one of the best looking games I've ever played.
I definitely agree with that. I think it leads hard into that fantasy view of Japan with all the foliage, the different colored flowers, like in just different sections of the island. Like you'll have like the red.
What, the spider lilies?
There were spider lilies.
Like that
The
giant
spider
field of
lilies. That
red.
was the.
The grasslands with their white and stuff was awesome. The
Right.
first place you start in, like all the yellow leaves.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
it's a game that very much is all about vibrant color. Because even in like some of the mythic tales, the way you find places is they're like, oh yeah, look for the huge
Right,
amount of colorful
exactly. The
flowers,
way
and
that they
that's
use the world in those missions to create a path, like you would follow the red flowers or, follow the the blue flowers, the mountain with the blue flowers on top. That was such interesting game design.
yep,
Immersive. Hmm.
yeah, it was incredible.
Anywho,
Now it's time for my favorite part of talking
yep,
about games. Time to talk about trophies. This game doesn't have too many notable trophies. It does have, we both have the Platinum, one of the growing larger but still small amount of games that we both have Platinum trophies in.
that's true.
You know, the experienced gamers that we are. The two notable trophies to me is one, Living Legend, which is the Platinum trophy for the game. Which, the reason this trophy is so noteworthy to me is because, whenever you get a trophy, there's like that little piece of art kind of thing that is with it, like a little picture.
Hmm.
And this was one of the like few kind of like trophies that I saw it and I thought that looks beautiful.
Hmm.
Like it showed up in like my news feed on PS4 because that's a thing when you had gotten it because I hadn't even played the game at that point, and it was just such a beautiful looking trophy that it was like the first time that I was like, well, man, I want to get the platinum just because the trophy looks so nice. Because basically, it's got the ghost mask in the middle, and then surrounding it, you have leaves, you have little like grass ferns, you have like a wheat stalk, and it's bronze, gold, and silver because you have all the bronze, gold, and silver trophies. And it was just thought it was one of the most beautiful trophy designs I've seen. And of all the platinum trophies I have, it is one of the two best looking like platinum trophies designs that I have. That like I remember specifically being like, man, I love how this trophy looks. And then the other noteworthy one, because it's an Easter egg, which I guess also going into our Easter eggs section here, is called Cooper Clan Cosplayer, which is to dress up as a legendary thief, is the description. Which basically, there's a sword kit you can get, a headband, and then an armor set that you can get a. To somewhere I guess we didn't talk about, there are merchants in the game that sell like cosmetic stuff, and with the armor they sell like dyes, so the armors have different colors. I didn't really mess with that too much. It wasn't something that I was like too into because I thought the armors themselves all looked fine with their normal color. And but basically, if you get this collection of items, you get this trophy, which is a reference to Sly Cooper. You need like the crooked comma headband, which has like his kind of like he has that staff, and the symbol on the end of the staff is on it. There's the Sly Tanuki sword kit, which like your sheath then has like a furry design that looks like a raccoon, and then the armor colors look like his clothing and overall colors as well. So obviously a reference to Sly Cooper. You can also find a headband that is the same color design as the beanie worn by Delson Rowe in Infamous Second Son. Even like the thing that really gives it away because his beanie is just plain red, but it has like a tag on the front, and the headband has that same tag on it, which is really I think like a nice detail. Also at the end of the game, after you either kill or don't kill your uncle, and you go basically like after the credits, Jin is in this little hut that I think like Yuna helped him make or something. He's just there, and it has a bunch of stuff in it. And in it, you can find this table that has a bunch of origami. Would you say like things on it, just origami pieces?
References, right?
I mean, yeah, they're all references to PS4 exclusives, as this is the last PS4 exclusive. It pays homage to all the previous ones before it. There is Ratchet's head from Ratchet and Clank. There is a motorcycle, which many believe to be a reference to Days Gone specifically, because the main character in that drives a motorcycle. There is a fancy car, which is a reference to Gran Turismo. There is the big giraffe thing from Horizon Zero Dawn. There is a Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus, which originally a PS2 game. The remaster was PS4 exclusive. There is a acoustic guitar for The Last of Us Part 2. There is a broom, which is it's a broom kind of like wand thing. It's a reference to the game Concrete Genie. I never played that, so I didn't really get it, but it is there. There is the logo for Kojima Productions, which made Death Stranding. There is a logo for London Studio, which made PlayStation VR Worlds. And I assume they made other things. I am not sure. There's like this fluff ball with eyes from Dreams. There's a baseball bat with like a little ball on it from MLB The Show. And there's a Leviathan axe from God of War. A lot of
Hmm.
stuff here, a lot of games to reference. It's nice to just, they get them all in just this one shot, pretty much.
Hmm.
Very cool looking.
That is cool. I never saw any of that.
Yeah, it's like right at the end. All right. So then, oh,
Oh,
all right.
this will be a
So,
quick one.
yep. So go over some kind of quick run through of some things. So, your favorite moment.
My favorite moment was Lady Adachi's side quest. I mean, it starts out pretty rough and tumble. I mean, her whole family is murdered on the day that shit's already going down on the island, you
Yeah,
know.
she lost her husband and two sons on the battle at Komodo Beach,
Hmm.
and then she lost the rest of like her grandchildren and
Yeah,
her sons' wives,
literally
and
everybody. And so you spend a long time trying to figure out who who did this to her family, and the whole time she's like losing her mind
yeah,
and
well,
she's
it's basically
becoming more
like
vicious.
you find a list of all the people who were in on it,
Right,
and her most of her missions are hunting these people down and killing them while trying to figure out who the mastermind was.
right. And it ends up being her sister. And the whole thing ends up being like about
Well, basically, it's like when they were younger,
right.
their home was attacked by bandits,
Uh-huh.
and the older sister,
Yes.
who Masako is the younger sister, which usually the older sister is the one who would, marry the people with power stuff. It's, you know,
That's what it's all about. It's all about which one of the sisters got to marry the samurai.
and so when
That's
the
what this whole quest
pretty
ended
much.
up being
Well,
about.
I think it's more because it's like when the bandits attacked, the older sister and the parents hid, but Masako actually like tried to fight them off. And when the samurai arrived, including Lord Adachi, they found her fighting the people, or at that point she'd already beaten them. I don't remember exactly. And so that like the Lord Adachi instantly fell in love with her. Like he really liked her because she was cool. And so Masako felt that her sister was jealous, so she found this guy who I think had recently become a widower, and he was someone with like some status. And so she basically just married her sister off and shipped her off with that guy,
That's right.
thinking that would be like, hey,
What she wanted.
yeah, because she wanted that, that like status and marriage and stuff. But basically, that guy was like a drunk, abusive man, and so her sister just resented her, and that is what led to that whole plot.
Hmm. Your favorite moment?
I loved the ending. I loved that whole like just the seriousness of Shimura versus Jin, and then choosing to kill him. Just that moment of pain of because Jin didn't want to do it, but it was like his last respect to his uncle. That even though he didn't agree with his ways, I think Jin still absolutely loved his uncle, respected him.
That's bullshit. You're a monster for killing him. He was a
He wanted it.
hero. He was the Jito.
He
It doesn't
he
matter what
he
he
asked
wanted.
he
It
asked for
didn't
it.
matter what he wanted.
He asked for
I
it.
don't care.
He said do it, so I did it.
He didn't kill himself when I left, so he didn't want to die that bad.
I mean, favorite boss battle?
I said Ryuzo,
Which one?
the time where you kill him. Because I wanted to kill Ryuzo for a long time. Because I was pissed when he betrayed us the first time. I really liked him.
I I I also liked him. I didn't want to kill him. I think I think that's also a kind of a sign of just how much the events of the game changed Jin because Ryuso pretty much had a hand in Taka's death because Ryuso is the one who trapped Jin, like tricked him and stuff. And I think like if Ryuso had asked to come back before that whole stuff, Jin would have said yes. But it's the fact that it was after that is what made Jin like, no, you're done.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a redemption before for Ryuzo, but it is what it is.
yeah,
He chose his fate.
yeah.
You?
Lord Shimura, the
Hmm.
ending boss fight is just the music is incredible, the fight is emotional.
It is emotional.
The itself is beautiful because you're at the Sakai grave, at his father's grave. This red and white, like red leaves, white flowers with petals, whatever, flying like all around. It is just a very beautiful fight, and it was very anything you specifically didn't like about the game that you feel worth mentioning.
Nothing that I haven't already mentioned. The issues I had with traversal, the lack of freedom in the grapple hook and stuff like that. Other than that, I think it's good.
Mm, yeah, I did not like the boss fight with Goten Khan. I felt like in the third act, despite the fact that the entire focus of the third act is killing him, I feel like he really took a back seat and just didn't matter anymore at that point in the story. Like you have no like after like act two, you get captured by him and talk to him, but like in act three, like he's not there. Like you don't see him at all until the final fight, and it's just like it just happens. There's like no conversation or anything. They just fight and then like you beat him a bit, he runs onto his ship, you fight other people as well. It's like at the moment when you kill him, he doesn't even have a health bar. He's just like one amongst a group of enemies fighting you, just he obviously takes a lot more hits. Like it really to me just he went from like at the beginning being the big bad to just being a guy.
I 100% agree with that. I was gonna say, in the boss fight, like when he runs onto the ship, and I ran onto the ship, and I killed him, and I was like, I didn't even know it was him. I didn't know where he was. It didn't tell you this is Koten Khan. It was
Yeah.
a very
Like there's no
anticlimactic
yeah.
boss fight.
Yeah, like there's no like conversation between two people. Even like when you're killing him, it's like completely silent. Nobody says anything. It was not. It was very
It
disappointing.
was really weird direction for them to take with that. But then at that point, to me, I was done with that too. I was way more interested in the Lord Shimura
Yeah,
ghost type stuff,
yeah.
the Shogun,
Mm-hmm.
and what's gonna happen
Yeah.
there.
What do you think about replayability?
I believe that the replayability for the story of this game is low, but I do think like either way you make your choice, I do think it's open ended and there could be more.
Yeah, I thought the replayability of this was very low. I did when New Game Plus was added. There's a trophy for beating the game on New Game Plus, and I liked the game a lot. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll just run through the story because this game has the same thing that other Sucker Punch games has, where it's a long game, but if you just go through the story, there are one, not a lot of story missions, and two, it doesn't take you that long to get through them. And this, it didn't when I basically just did the story missions and it did not take a long time. But I felt like it wasn't changed enough to be like any more challenging or anything. It was just kind of more annoying with enemies because like it was the same enemies just earlier in the game. So it's like the enemies that took 3 hits that took would take 2 hits to kill are now enemies that take 3 hits that you normally wouldn't see until later. And but there weren't like stronger enemies introduced. There weren't different enemy types. Nothing was introduced to make combat more intense or anything. And that because I had everything, it was just like from the beginning I was so overpowered that I was just running through it, and I just really did not enjoy that playthrough. Like I got through it as fast as I could because I just was not into it.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
But could you see a sequel?
Oh, a sequel, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
I don't know. The game is kind of open ended with its ending. It's like I think the story is good. It does not need a sequel. Like I'm fine with the way it wrapped up. I would be nervous if a sequel was announced because I'm like, well, I hope they don't screw this up. Like, I don't want the sequel to suck. So it's like I am
I'm
curious.
not saying it has to be about Jin
Well, I mean, if they
being
just make another game in this, I mean, another samurai game, I would absolutely play that.
right.
Yeah, I'm cautious about them making another,
Speaking of more stuff, Legends mode is the online mode, 2 to 4 player co op, story
which
missions, and survival
yeah,
that came out
which it's
post
like
launch.
give Sucker Punch credit in the day of microtransactions and game companies trying to squeeze out
Hmm.
every possible cent. This was completely free when it came out.
Right.
There aren't any microtransactions in it.
Yep.
It is completely nothing, but it's very, very fun.
It is fun.
So
It's
the game,
complete.
yes, it is very good. The game, basically, you have two-player co-op story missions, four-player co-op survival. There are four classes: the Hunter, Samurai, Assassin, and Ronin. Which basically, Hunter focuses on more range stuff.
They differ slightly
They
in
are
skill.
very, very similar, and I mean the combat is the exact same for all of them. They all get range run stuff, but they all have kind of different abilities and different ultimates. Basically,
Right, that's
the
true.
the hunter focuses on archery abilities. It's the only class that gets the longbow. The samurai is definitely like the tank class, meant to be in combat, dealing damage, taking hits. The assassin is stealth character, and then the ronin is a healer.
Hmm.
They have a healing ability. They get a lot of it's a very good support class. I really liked someone who I did get all four of these classes to rank 20 for a trophy. I would definitely say the Ronin was probably my favorite because of that support aspect. I feel like he just had more options to him. But I did like the other ones as well.
Right, so all the missions have 3 tiers, being bronze, silver, gold, and then there's a nightmare thing, a
Which
nightmare tier
Yep.
for, I think it's once weekly.
Yeah,
There's a nightmare mission and a nightmare survival.
and we
Um,
tried a nightmare mission once, and we got our asses handed to us a lot,
we did. It was very hard.
very hard. But it was
Um,
also one of the hardest missions in the story. Was the one that
mhm,
was there. And the story mission is very simple. There's not really much of a story to them. Basically, the overarching thing is this Oni Baba named Io is sending a bunch of Oni to Tsushima. The ghosts fight them off and then go to her realm to take her down, which that is the raid, which is split into 3 chapters. We tried the first chapter very hard. The one thing I don't like about the raid is you can't do matchmaking with the raid, which is terrible because the two of us and Kyle are the only people we know that play this game. So you can't do the raid without 4 people. Like you cannot beat it. So we literally we got through the first area and got to the second area and got stuck on that, and it's like you can't do it with literally in later sections of that chapter you have to have 4 people.
mhm.
So that was a shame, but it's still fun. Like I don't have a lot of experience doing raids, but certainly even that first part that we did, just the aspect of figuring out what we have to do and doing it, it was fun.
It was fun. I enjoyed
It
it.
was fun. I wish I could get 3 other people that we could actually attempt the raid in full because I'm sure it would be very entertaining and very fun. The game has basically your key level, which is basically like for the multitude of people I'm sure that have played Destiny is like your light level. The equipment has levels that has abilities that you get to use if you wear it, and then it basically goes up to a max of 110. If you do the raid and nightmare challenges, you get those rewards. But going through like gold, it's a max of 105, which obviously not much of a difference there, but it progresses pretty quickly to the point where I didn't really have to do any grinding to be able to advance to the next tier. So it was fun.
Hmm.
I enjoyed it. It was played it a lot. Played through all the story missions like at least 3 times because I did them all on bronze, silver, and gold.
Right.
It was fun. Like it never really got stale.
I completely agree. I believe that Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic, complete game, and in my opinion, is the best game to come out this year. I would vote it 2020's game of the
Yeah, I certainly would as well. I was very nervous about it going in because I was like, first off, it's like a game all about Japan, not made by a Japanese developer. It was this second samurai game to come out in the last 2 years,
year. Hmm.
and I was just like, the previous games I played where there was swordplay like that, for the most part, was like okay, but not incredible swordplay. And a game about samurai that has to be the focus because
Hmm.
you're a samurai,
Right.
and it really blew my expectations out of the water.
Right.
Okay, so now because we decided that the podcast wasn't long enough, we decided to add a little segment to the end here that we're calling the indie bit. Basically, it's the bit where we talk about indie games.
This week we're talking about Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares is an indie game that we have both played at this point. It is about a child who is in a scary place which is underground. It's really unclear.
Basically, you're playing as this little girl named Six.
Oh,
I know this from the internet.
oh no, that I heard about this. There's lore and stuff. None of that is in the game. It
Yeah, no,
doesn't
it's
count if it's not in the game.
on a boat or a submarine.
Right.
Kind of one of the two. I don't really think it matter. It doesn't really matter in terms of gameplay. You're just on the water
Mm-hmm.
because that actually does matter. There are gameplay elements that are affected by that
That is true.
because it does rock back and forth slowly. Yeah, very simple story. Gameplay as well is very simple. Basically, you just it's a like standard kind of 3D platformer puzzle solving type game.
Mm-hmm.
You run, you jump, you pick
Grab,
things up,
throw.
pull things, throw things. Very
Mm-hmm.
simple stuff. So, what did you think of it?
All in all, I enjoyed it aesthetically. I thought it was a very interesting looking game. All the characters or creatures are drawn well. I like how they do transitions a lot are interesting, how you go from one room to the other. And then there's like a section where a bunch of giant fat people are crawling after you. They do a lot of set pieces like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that, but what I don't appreciate is the gameplay itself. It was simple. It's a platformer. I get that, but I did have a lot of trouble there. Like my jump wouldn't be far enough, or my grab wouldn't be right, and it would feel a lot more like game issues than my fault. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where platformers I kind of get a little bored of it. Like at about halfway through, I started playing through the whole game with a walkthrough.
Yeah, did I like it? No, no, I did not.
Okay.
I do like what you said. The game looks good, and you have this like you said, the transition to me, it kind of like was sort of like a dollhouse kind of thing, where like how it would transition to each room, and you'd see the kind of like literal fourth wall that you are
Right.
peering in from.
Right.
I did not like the story because to me, actual story itself, without going into the lore, is not very good. But then it doesn't. To me, it didn't tease enough of the lore for me to be interested in wanting to find out more.
Mm.
Like I played this with my girlfriend watching, and she was into it, and she was like wanting to look up stuff and thought it was very interesting. And I was just like, I mean, there's nothing. Like, there's nothing. To
Mm.
me, it was just a worse version of a Playdead game. Who
Mm.
Playdead made Limbo and
Right.
Inside, and this just it did not control well, like you said. And with Limbo and Playdead, I found myself interested by those games even without knowing the overall big picture. But this one, I just didn't have that. There was nothing really drawing me in. And gameplay, like you said, it is for a 3D platformer to me one of the worst I've played in terms of controls. Because one, the depth perception is weird because it's kind of hard to tell
Mm.
if there are gaps, whether or not you
Yeah.
actually will like. There are a lot of like kind of balance beam kind of sections where there's a
Yeah.
thin platform you have to walk across. That's hard. Running is even worse.
Oh yeah, I
The
remember a section where there's like just a giant set of stairs against the wall, and my character constantly would just, as I'm trying to run up these stairs, just fall off.
and the use of the analog stick is so bad in this game. It's like very easy where I'm like I'm holding right, I'm only holding right, I swear, but my character is walking forward.
Mm.
And one thing that a lot of 3D platformers especially do that can help with that is directional pad. You can use the D-pad instead,
Mm.
but this game does not let you do that, which to me made me even more annoyed because of how the controls weren't great. And yeah, I just did not enjoy it. Like I did go through and get most of the trophies in this game because they're all pretty easy stuff, just collectible stuff like that. But there's one where you have to beat the game in under an hour without dying. Which the under an hour part is very simple once you know what to do, just run everywhere.
Right.
But the controls are so bad that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I wouldn't even attempt it because I was like, because anytime you fall, anything like that, dead.
Right.
You have to restart, and that's just very annoying. And it's also like you said with like jumping not far enough. Also, very annoying control scheme of square is the run button,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of jumps that you have to run to make them. But then pressing square with your thumb, and then also having to press X at the same time, it's just an awkward
Transition.
transition that I just thought was dumb. And I don't even think it lets you remap it. I feel like I did try to remap that to like R2. Basically switch because the grab button is R2, which also is kind of weird.
Mm.
In many games I played, I would expect square to be grab, R2 to be run, but it wasn't. And yeah, I just didn't enjoy it.
Overall, I actually had a pretty decent time. It turned out to be a lot easier when I had a walkthrough. Then, in that case, I was pretty much watching it and playing through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would still mess up because of the controls. So it
Mm-hmm.
was still hard. I was
Yeah.
still fighting the
And I mean,
controls.
I would also say if you're playing through a game with a walkthrough to just get through the game, then it's not good. Like if you
Well,
feel like you
the
have
game
to,
itself is not fun to play.
yeah,
Yeah, but I wanted to see what would happen next. I
yeah,
was captivated by the set design
yeah.
and the creatures, the
Mm-hmm.
long-armed man and
Mm-hmm.
the dolls, and
Yeah,
like it was all very
yeah,
interesting looking, and that kept me in for the short amount of time that the game is.
yeah. It's
I think it's worth the money,
I did
considering we paid like $8 for it.
yeah. We also did get the DLC, which you didn't play,
I didn't.
but I did. Just very quickly go over that. It's worse. The controls are still as bad. You get a flashlight instead of a lighter because that's kind of a big aspect of the
Mm,
game. Which flashlight itself lights up more, which is cool. But using the right stick to control your arm, it can actually be really hard to control the beam. The levels themselves are more open, which is just incredibly frustrating for like puzzle solving. Like the first game, I did not have to look up anything in that game. I was able to get through it. But this one, there are times where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Also, it kind of annoyed me just the title of it because the expansion levels called The Secret of the Maw, which the Maw I think is the place you're in, but it doesn't really explain anything about it. It explains two things. One, the like woman with the mask at the end of the game that you end up fighting and killing,
hmm
she's actually ugly because at one point, as this little boy you're playing as, you like see her looking into a mirror and her reflection is ugly. So it's like, okay, whatever. And as the little boy, she actually catches you and she turns you into a gnome, which are those little creatures with the pointy heads.
Mm,
So all those creatures are kids, actually, that were turned into those.
damn.
If you want to get super specific, you turn into the very one that at the end of chapter 4 in the main game you kill. That's like holding out food for
And you
you.
eat it?
Yeah, that's actually the little boy in the DLC that you're playing as.
How is that? Like they just said that, or how
Yeah,
would you
because
know?
you get turned into a gnome, and then it's not over. You're like running around,
Does
and you
it
end
end
up
there?
it ends with you like in that room, and there are other gnomes, and they're kind of like they kind of run away, and you see that little piece of food on the ground, and you like go to grab it. I think the girl walks in at the end, but like it doesn't show her kill you, but
Mm.
it's she might not, but it's very obvious, like, oh, you were that one. You were that exact one. Which there are in those episodes of the DLC, the 3 episodes, points where it is very obvious that it does cross over with the main game. Like, you see Six running around, or, like, stuff like that, which are very cool. Like,
That is
another one
cool.
is at the end of in episode 2 of the main game, you get caught in that cage and you have to escape. And that long armed man, who's the janitor, like, grabs that other cage and pulls it off screen. At the end of episode 1, as the little boy, you are the thing in that cage. You end up in that cage, and you are the thing that gets dragged away. So those moments are cool because it's like, oh yeah, this is from the main game. But overall, for being called Secrets of the Maw, I'm like, didn't really explain too much, and I just did not enjoy the experience. Easy trophies, but so this being our 6th episode,
Mm.
I realized in none of the previous episodes did we ever say when this podcast come out. Never once. So to explain that now,
To be fair, I don't know. I don't know when they come out.
yeah, they come out every other Monday.
Oh.
We did have a gap between 4 and 5 because holidays and stuff,
Mm.
because it was the end of the year. But every other Mondays, yeah, that's when new episodes come out. Also, just fun little thing, this being the first episode that we have recorded in the new year, we use Buzzsprout to like host this podcast, and at the end of 2020, they actually sent me an email with some fun facts about our
Our
podcast
podcast?
that I thought I would like to read to you now. Just a
Okay.
few of them. Some of the highlights from that. In 2020, the most popular episode was God of War, which was
Nice.
downloaded 12 times.
Nice.
It says kind of different apps, says the length of content, the shortest episode being Grim Fandango, the longest being The Last of Us Part 2. Also, my favorite thing is in 2020, the Super Gamer Bros podcast was downloaded 4 times from Lake Stevens, Washington. which is our most popular city.
Wait, what? Who the hell?
Yeah, so to the one guy from Lake Stevens, Washington that has listened to this podcast, if you listen to this, hey, thanks for listening.
You sound creepy. Don't talk about his city.
Hey, thanks for listening. You know,
Tell your
tell your friends and
friends.
enemies about the podcast. And also, rate and subscribe. Tell us if you like our show, or tell us if you don't, and tell us why. Please, we don't know what we're doing. We'd like some feedback. And you can follow our Twitter at Superb Gamer Bros, SUPERB Gamer Bros, for updates on episodes. And yeah, we'll see you guys next game.
Bye.